look at me, look at me. I'm a masterpiece. Look at me, look at me. I'm a masterpiece. Look at me, look at me. I'm a masterpiece, created by the one and only, created by the one and only. Look at me.
Welcome to Becoming Made for You. I am your host, Sandra Louise, and I thank you so much for tuning in tonight. There's so many things you could have been doing, but you chose to hang out here. So thank you so much. As the title suggests, ASAP, appointed, set apart, and assigned pain. It's all about purpose. Yes, that's the title, and that's what we're going to be getting into tonight. I want to get into how God uses pain as preparation for purpose in our lives. Before we get any further into the broadcast, I invite you to go ahead, like, share, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Okay? That way we can kind of share more of what is going on here tonight. And although the broadcast is pre recorded, I will be in the comment section. So if you want to do comments or anything, I will definitely answer you there. But yeah, so let's go ahead and do that. Go ahead and like, share, and subscribe to the channel. So, one of the main things about what we're going to be talking about tonight is that pain that we experience in life is never wasted in the kingdom. It's never wasted. There's nothing that you've gone through, there's nothing that you've experienced in your life that God has overlooked, forgotten about, threw in the waste pile or whatever. No, every single thing that you have gone through, God has considered it. One of the things that I always say, you guys hear me say this all the time. Romans 8:28 just rings true to me, and it's something that I live by all the time. Is that, and we know that all things are working together for the good for those who love God and who are the called according to his purpose. One of the things that we all have in common is that none of us are exempt from pain. I don't care who you are, where you come from, where you've been. It's one of the commonalities that we all have, and that none of us are exempt from it. But what if pain wasn't viewed as punishment, but rather as preparation? Have you ever thought about that? Sometimes our very uh, perspective of something can change how we experience it. We can be going through the same thing, we can be experiencing the same thing, but a change in perspective can change how we engage in it, how we go through it. I'm reminded how in my own life, this has been a truth that I've wrestled with for uh, many trials, many things that I've experienced. We're just kind of, just unpacking. I'm being very vulnerable and very transparent in this. Is that for years, when I would be going through some. Now, the first thing I want to say is that anytime we're going through something, it doesn't mean that, God did it, that it's something that God sent. No, sometimes we go through stuff just because we were disobedient. Sometimes things happen to us that we had no control over that may have come at the hands of somebody else. So we're going to experience pain, and they can come in various ways. It can be self-inflicted or it can be something that was totally out of our control. But the commonality that we have is that we're all going to experience it. And when we do, again, how do we go through it? So one of the things that I found as I was doing a self-evaluation of times where I was experiencing different things, and I would be asking the question, Lord, why me? That tends to be the first thought, when we go through anything is, why me? Why am I going through this? And sometimes when we really get that in that self-righteous mode, it's like, I don't deserve this and all of that. But when I was asking the question of why me, it wasn't because I was actually looking to to get a revelation from God. I wasn't really asking him, because I wanted a real revelation of it. I wasn't seeking truth about it. It was more to the effect, God, why am I going through this, and hurry up and get me out, and feeling sorry for myself, okay? And when in fact, if I was looking at it through the lens of God and through the lens of why he allows his children to go through, the question wouldn't have been, why me? But in fact, why not me? Why not me going through something that is preparing me for something greater than where I am right now? If you're facing any kind of trial, any type of what you consider a delay or a hindrance or something that, and especially if you've gone through something for a long time, I want you to look at this message as this is something that is just for you. I don't believe that anything that we come across is just by half chance. And especially if it's coming to you at a season where you're experiencing this, I believe that it could be the answer to that question that you may have been asking yourself. Why me? Why am I going through this? Why is it taking so long? Don't feel bad. We all have been there. Okay. So it's some key things that I want to kind of touch on tonight. And number one is going to be pain has an origin, it has a purpose, and your pain has an expiration date. Pain is God's preparation ground for purpose. Consider Joseph's life. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk a lot about that tonight. But also, pain positions us to trust God's higher ways and walk in destiny. Now, let's take a look at pain, not through our own eyes, but through the lens of God. So, as far as the body, and we're going to look at it as the body of Christ. We're going to look at his body because this is what we're talking about. And this is what becoming made for you is all about. It's becoming the bride that Jesus is coming back for. And so, knowing that with that perspective, we're going to look at it through that lens. So, pain always has meaning in God's kingdom. As I mentioned before, Romans 8:28, no pain is wasted. All things are working together for our good because we love him and are the called according to his purpose. That's his word. Albert Einstein, quote, no problem can be solved on the same level of consciousness that created it. The word of God says that my people perish for lack of knowledge. And because they have rejected knowledge, I will reject them as my priest, and I will reject your children. Now, are the children the physical children? I don't really know. Okay. But what I believe is the fruit of whatever it was that came from that decision that you made. That there's better ways of doing something. And when you get that information, but then you choose, well, I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to do it my way. I'm going to do it myself. Then you're going to have to pay the consequences. You're going to have the consequences of rejecting that knowledge that was brought to you. I remember Dr. Miles Monroe, I believe it was him that said that every problem that we face is an information problem. It's something that you don't know that somebody else knows who don't have that problem. They may have been in the same situation, but they've been able to solve it because they had the information that you need in order to do the same thing. And so it's information a lot of times that we lack. And if we're not going to the source of where that information is, then which is God and his ways being higher than our ways, according to Isaiah 55, 8 and 9, he said, my ways are higher than your ways. My thoughts are higher than your thoughts. In other words, if you want things the way I say that you can have them, you're going to have to come up. You're going to have to come up. You can't stay in that same dysfunctional pattern that you've been operating in. A lot of times, the things that we're going through is a result of us doing the same things the same way, but expecting to get a different result. That's what a lot of people call insanity. But isn't it something that pain is pain no matter what? We all experience it. What is the reason for that pain? Is it something that I brought upon myself? Is it something that someone else put on me? Or is it something that God is using to grow me? There's something to think about. Now, one of the things in dealing with pain is understanding what pain is and what the purpose of it is for. One of the things that pain does, it alerts us. It lets us know that something is out of order, there's something going on here. And it's a rare condition that people have where they can't feel pain. They can feel, like touch, or they can feel some type of pressure, but they don't feel pain. And so pain protects us, but then pain also develops us. And it's the definition and the reason why pain is necessary. The definition is associated with development, and Merriam Webster's dictionary refers to growing pains in this way. Now, physically, it's the pain in the legs of growing children having demonstrable relation to growth. But then there's a second definition that it gives. It's the stresses and strains attending a new project or development. Interesting. Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor, once said, suffering ceases to be suffering at the point you discover why. Now, the very fact that I said this is a quote by a Holocaust survivor should immediately cause our antenna to go up. Because if anybody should know, you would think it would be him. Could it be that he had a revelation of something that we have yet to grasp? That what we consider suffering because we don't understand the purpose of it, would actually cease to be suffering at the moment we listen and we ask the Lord, Father, why did this come to me? What are you developing in me? What is it that you want me to do? What is to come from this? Because I know you don't just get pleasure out of seeing your children suffer. I know that can't be the reason why I'm experiencing this. It has to be something more. And so at the moment we discover why, at the moment we discover, we stick around and we ask God and we seek the truth behind what we're going through. There's a grace that's given to us when we do that, when we choose to see things through the eyes of God and not through the eyes of man, not through the eyes of our pain. We're silencing that voice and we're listening to the voice of the one who loves us, that loves us enough that even in our discipline, there's something that he's developing in us that's going to make us better than where we currently are. Dr. Miles Monroe, another powerful man of God, and another one that I quote often, said this about purpose, that unless the purpose of a thing is known, abuse is inevitable. The beauty behind purpose and the purpose for pain is that when we choose to see it through the eyes of God and why he does things the way he does them, God always has a bigger plan than anything we could ever imagine. We really do. We really have to understand that I don't care how grandiose your plan is, when it comes to what God has prepared for you, it cannot compare. Consider Joseph's journey. I'm not going to go into the whole story because most of you know it. and but I do want to point out some key things about Joseph. There was roughly a 13-year time frame between the 17-year-old Joseph and him having the dreams of him seeing himself in this place where he was going to be elevated, and that his brothers and even his parents at one point would be bowing down to him. And him actually being second in charge in Egypt, roughly 13 years. Now, imagine for a moment, because we tend to have this thing where we read these stories and we have the privilege of knowing the outcome and knowing what happened generations and generations after. But how often do we consider these people in real time? See, they didn't know what their story was going to be. Even though he had dreams, he didn't know what he was going to go through between him having the dream and him actually being in a place. He didn't even really know what that was going to look like. Keep in mind, what actually happened, he was in a different place, something that was unfathomable from where he was. And in between him getting the having the dreams, he didn't know that there was going to be a pit involved, where that was the alternative to them killing him. That they wanted to kill him, they wanted to end his life, but instead, the better option was him being thrown in a pit. What he didn't know was that after that, imagine what he must have felt like being in that pit. Just stop and think for a moment what it must have been like that your own brothers, your own flesh and blood, hated you so much that they would throw you in a pit as an alternative to killing you. And that by the grace of God, there's some travelers that come by. And instead of, while they're trying to decide what they're going to do, they decide, okay, this is a good option. This way, his blood is not on our hands. We're not doing anything to him. At least, we sold him, and at least, he has a chance. Okay. But we don't have to deal with him. Okay. So he gets sold. And then he ends up in Potiphar's house. And the favor on his life, this is something I want you to remember, that no matter what you go through, whatever God has on you, the favor that he has on you, it doesn't leave because of your circumstance. It doesn't lift up off of you. Because as we see in Joseph's life, the same favor that was on him in those dreams gave him favor to be thrown in the pit rather than be killed. And then rather than stay in the pit, get sold. And even though he was sold as a slave, he ends up in the man's house where the man gives him control over everything in his house except his wife. You can have anything else. And that's a whole other story, because I believe he knew what kind of wife he had. Okay. And we see this favor after she accuses him of trying to come at her. Now, if he really believed that Joseph tried to come at her, why wouldn't he have him killed? But instead, he has him imprisoned. So it lets me know he knew what kind of wife he had, and he knew the integrity and the character of Joseph. And so that favor even was with him when he was being falsely accused of something that he didn't do. So now he gets in the prison. And even in the prison, the man has favor. He's got favor with the wardens. He's got favor even with the inmates. To the point where you have the butcher and the butler and the baker who both had dreams. And they're telling him about these dreams that they had. And Joseph interprets the dreams and tells him, in 3 days, this is going to happen to you. In other words, they're going to have your head. And to the other one, in 3 days, you're going to be restored back to your position. And both came true. And he tells them, while he's telling the butler in particular, because he's the one that's going to make it out of this ahead, literally, is that don't forget about me. Don't forget about me when you get restored. Remember me. Imagine what he must have felt like after a week has gone by. Nobody sends for him. A month goes by and nobody sends for him. A year goes by and nobody sends for him. Wow. Psalm 105 says this. I'm going to read verses 17 through 22. He sent a man before them, Joseph, who was sold as a slave. They hurt his feet with fetters. He was laid in irons until the time that his word came to pass. The word of the Lord tested him. The king sent and released him. The ruler of the people let him go free. He made him lord of his house and ruler of all his possessions, to bind his princes at his pleasure and teach his elders wisdom. That's powerful. So the favor of God was yet on Joseph. It was yet on him, even though he had gone through all of that. By the time he got to the place where they remembered him in the prison, when the Pharaoh had a dream, and now the butler remembers. He remembers Joseph. Did he forget about him on purpose? Even though Joseph must have really been going through, he must have really been going through. How could he forget about me? I mean, surely, after all, I mean, he saw what happened to the baker. He got restored to his position. How could he forget about me? Recently, I was having a conversation with the Lord about some things that I felt like, Lord, surely by now, this and thus should have happened. What am I doing wrong? What is it, Lord? you know how is it that I know what your word says. How when you take every scripture that lines up with what God said, when he says put me in remembrance of my word, and you take all those words to him and say, okay, God, you said this. So what's up? Okay, what's going on here? And I was having one of those moments, and this time I wasn't talking at him, I was talking to him, listening for an answer. And what he showed me about this particular situation is that certain things God has not hidden from you. And I'm saying this because I know that this is a word not only for me, but it's for you as well. That sometimes God, what you think he's been hiding from you or what he's been keeping from you, he's actually been keeping and hiding for you. What he showed me about this particular situation, he said, because of the person that I am, he said, I had to hide it from you to keep it hidden from people who are close to you. Sometimes we're trusting people that God already has heard conversations that they've had behind your back. They may be one way with you, but they're a whole different way away from you. And sometimes, and I've spoken about this before, The idolatry that a lot of us may wrestle with is not the obvious. It's not the, it's not, we have a love for money, or we have a love for, lustful stuff, and the things that we would normally consider, especially if you can see it, with somebody else, oh, they just idolize this person, or they idolize that thing, or they idolize. But one of the things that we can idolize is loyalty, where we're loyal to people who were with us in a certain season of our lives, or we're loyal to a process, or we're loyal to an organization, or we're loyal to certain things that they've been something for us in another season in our lives that God is saying can't go into the next season that He's taking you in. And what He was showing me is you had a lot of loyalty idolatry based on where you were. And it doesn't always mean it's something wrong with the people. I want to get that clear. It doesn't always mean that it's something wrong with them, but it's sometimes the the place that we position them in our lives. Anyone that you put in higher authority or higher regard than God's word in your life, you've made an idol out of them. And it's not always their fault. Sometimes it's because of the position you place them in, that God has to protect you from you. He's got to protect you from, He knows that they don't have the capacity that you're pouring into them. Think of yourself as a gallon container. And you have a friend who is a cup. Their sizes, their capacity is cup size. And they're coming to you because they're half empty, or they're half full, however you want to look at it. They're half empty or half full. You're a gallon and you're filled up. They come to you and they ask you, could you pour? They're drawing from you because they know that you have what they need. And you begin to start pouring into them. But if you, the gallon, keep pouring, what's going to happen? It's going to overflow. It's going to be too much for them to contain. They don't have the capacity for a gallon container. They were only half full, and their capacity is only a cup. So their rejection of saying no more, no more, no more is not because you're too much. It's because you're too much for them. They don't have the capacity to accommodate what you're pouring into them. So a lot of the relationships that we've had that have ended bad, they've ended with rejection. They've ended with, feelings being hurt, and you just couldn't believe that they would do what they did, and all of those things. It wasn't always because they were so bad. Sometimes I really believe that when we experience rejection, it's only because God may have been trying to show us some things about ourselves way before the rejection occurred that we were just too blind to see. And the only way that we'll actually get it is through the experience of rejection. Now, rejection, because all things work together for our good, as we saw in Joseph's life, did did his brothers really reject him? Or was it the tool that God used to get him from the land where they would experience a famine that God was able to use Joseph to interpret the Pharaoh's dream in order to prepare for those lean years that were going to happen. To prepare, he wouldn't have known had God not given Joseph the interpretation. What if the butler had told Pharaoh as soon as he got restored to his position? Man, I have to tell you, there's a man in prison. His name is Joseph, and he told me that this was going to happen. We don't know what state of mind or where his heart was at that time. Sometimes you can provide the right information at the wrong time and it actually work against you. So could it be that it wasn't that he forgot about him, but he forgot about him on purpose? The purpose for him being in that position and being restored was so that 3 years later, when the Pharaoh had that dream, now he would remember. Oh, I know a man. The same one that told me that I was gonna be restored back to serving you, because now he's got 3 faithful years. So he's got credibility. So whatever happened that got him in prison in the first place, oh, that's history. Because he's got 3 proven years that this man is faithful. And now his word carries weight with the Pharaoh, who's perplexed about this thing that he's been dreaming about. And now that Joseph is restored, now that Joseph is put in the position that he saw years and years ago. In that psalm that I read, in Psalm 105, in that verse where he said in verse 19, until the time that his word came to pass. What word? The word that he had been given in those dreams. Until that word came to pass, it was that word of the Lord that tested him. Even though Joseph was in prison, he still maintained favor in prison. So it wasn't so much that he was in prison, because we see he was treated a little different than the other prisoners because he had a favor that he walked in, that he carried. But it was that, God, I know what you showed me, and it don't line up with me, with where I'm at. It just don't make sense. You got to help me to understand this. It wasn't the prison that tried Joseph. It was the word. Now, really quick, I'm asking let's get back in Joseph's shoes for a moment. Imagine the night before he's remembered. It's a day like any other day. By this time, he's probably just gotten content with, this is just my lot. I'm just going to be here. I don't understand it. I know what the Lord showed me years ago, but I don't know. I don't even know if it's gonna happen. And then getting that rattle on the, I don't know what their door was like or what the gate or what the prison was like, but can you imagine the warden coming? Hey, Joseph, they're asking for you. The Pharaoh is asking for you. Imagine what that must have been like. I've recently spoken with someone who had a similar type of experience, and I'm just so looking forward to just seeing how this whole thing is going to play out and how God is going to do what I believe he's going to do in this person's life. But one of the things that they told me, they were experiencing something that was quite devastating. They had been going through it for a while. And where they saw no hope in where they were. They saw nothing getting better. It was actually just getting progressively worse. And I could tell, that what was happening and that they were losing that hope. But how something happened and overnight, literally overnight, if I was a preacher, by this time tomorrow, I mean, it was one of those kind of turnarounds where they discovered that, God really was with them and he had been with them through the entire time. And so to just think about what that was like for Joseph and then bring it to you today, what would it be like? I know you done gone through some stuff for a while. You've been going through for real. And you've almost like Joseph, you almost gave up on that word. It hasn't been so much the situations as much as you know what the Lord told you. But it just don't seem to be happening no time soon. There's something about pain, and it's something about the purpose that God uses pain for. Pain does a lot more. And this is what we saw in Joseph's story. By the time the famine hit and his brothers had to come, and he finally revealed himself to the brothers, you would think that, there would, oh man, you're the one that did this, that, and the other to me. And oh no, yeah, okay. Now you need something. Now you see. This is just what God showed me, what I told you God was going to do. But that wasn't Joseph's heart. That wasn't his heart because Joseph had gone through 13 years of being refined in his character. That's one of the things that pain does. It refines our character. And these are 3 points I want to bring out that you see in Joseph's life. Pain causes us to depend on God's timing. And you see that all through it. I'm not even going to go back through that again, but we saw that. God, it causes us to reflect and depend on God's timing, not ours. Because if it was up to me, I would have been through the stuff that I'm going through a long time ago. and it would have been a done deal. And when I thought it should have happened, pain positions us for greater influence. We saw Joseph had influence. He had influence in Potiphar's house. He had influence in the prison. And ultimately, the influence that he carried or favor that he carried ultimately was refined and perfected by the time he got to the palace. So that when he met his brothers, when he saw his brothers, and he understood what you meant for evil, God turned it around and made it good. What you thought you were doing to hurt me, brothers, now I understand. It might have been your intent, but don't worry. You didn't do anything but what God was using what was in you to do. Had you not done what you did, I wouldn't be here to help do what I'm doing for you, what God is doing through me for you. So while you were hating and you were despising and you were going through all of that, it hurt. I ain't even gonna lie, it hurt. And I understand better now that God only used all the things that were working together for my good because He knew I loved Him and He knew that there was a greater purpose in operation. So, how should we respond when the pain that we're experiencing at the time, in the moment, in real time, how should we be responding to that pain? Given the information that I just gave you, I want you to know that it's okay, that even Jesus experienced that. Remember, all through Jesus' ministry, he referred to God as his Father, my Father in heaven. He referred to him as Father. But while he lay hanging on that cross, while he was going through the ultimate, the pinnacle of his pain, even after crying out, forgive them, for they don't even know what they're doing, he's yet crying out for the people who are inflicting the pain upon him that he's dying for. Him, the innocent, the one who had done no wrong, who, if anybody didn't deserve it, it was him. That here he is taking on all of our pain and the punishment that we all deserve. And in all of that, he's saying, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do. But the moment he reflects on his own pain, my God, why have you forsaken me? It wasn't until he focused on his own pain. It was the one time he wasn't thinking about humanity. He wasn't thinking about all of us. He wasn't thinking about your sin and my sin. The moment he reflected on himself, my God, is the moment he forgot that his father was yet there with him and he felt forsaken. Romans 8, and I'm going to read verses 31 through 32. What then shall we say to these things? If God is for us, who can be against us? He who did not spare his own son, but delivered him up for us all, how shall he not with him also freely give us all things? If he is for us, the Almighty God, the Father, if he's for us, who who can be against us? That is a powerful revelation. That is such a powerful revelation. That if he didn't spare his own son, the suffering that he went through, and none of us, and I can say this with a certainty that none of us who are watching this or listening to this right now have been through that kind of suffering, because the very fact that we're here and you're listening lets me know none of us have gone through what Jesus went through, because he died. He rose again, but he died. So that tells me that no matter what we go through, these are the things that I need you to understand. Pain is something about pain that draws us closer to God. The word lets us know that he's near the broken heart. Those who are brokenhearted, that's the place where God is. He's nearer to us in our brokenness than any time when we're up and everything is going. He's with us all the time, but we are made more aware of him in our weakness. Pain draws us deeper into relationship, not religion. The other morning in devotion, I had been I had been reciting. You know how you have those confessions that you do, that those pre-done confessions that you say this every morning, and but this particular morning, as I'm doing my devotion, as I'm going through my devotion, Holy Spirit wouldn't let me go there. And he let me know I desire relationship, not religion. And it's okay to have a template. It's okay to have a template. As a matter of fact, in this verse in Matthew 6 is where we find the Lord's Prayer. And in verse 9, Jesus says, in this manner, therefore pray. So he's given us a template to how we are to pray. And so what I had been reciting was just a template of confessions that I would make every day. But this day, he said, I don't want you to give me the template. That's religion. When you're just going through the motions, and it's not to say that you don't mean what you say, but at some point we got to leave the template and cry out from what's really there. Because there's some things that God knows that we're going to be dealing with that day that may not even be on that list. Or it may be one thing that we need to focus on that's on that list, and the other things are not as relevant. And when we're praying in the Spirit, Holy Spirit will pray those things that we don't even know we're to pray. And so he was letting me know this is how I need you to show up. I don't need you to show up in a prepackaged version of who you think I want to talk with. No, I want you to come to me empty, hungry, and willing for whatever I have to serve you today. I want the prayer of your heart to come. I want your supplication to come from your heart. The word says that the Lord is a spirit, and they that worship him must worship him in spirit and in truth. And sometimes we can become so dependent on someone else's version of what we're supposed to come to God as that we fail to understand that God knows us. He knows everything about us. And when we come to him with that knowledge and we realize that he wants relationship with us, he wants to impart some things to us. He wants to tell us things that we don't know. That when we call upon him, he'll answer us and show us things that we don't know. This is the relationship he wants to have with us, not somebody else's version of what they say we should have. That we all should come in this way. We should all be coming and saying these same things. It's okay to get you started if you don't know. But at some point, we've got to graduate. We've got to grow past that elementary level of prayer, that elementary level of worship, that elementary level of dealing with the things that we're dealing with. And now that I'm thinking about it, I'm understanding why he was showing me that, because the last several times that I was reciting those, I remember thinking, man, this just doesn't seem to have the same impact that it had when I first started doing it. And I started feeling like I was going through the motions. I'm literally just remembering my mindset at the time that he told me this. And so I really believe, as I was saying earlier, this was a growing pain. He was stretching me, the discomfort that I was feeling, the dis-ease that I was feeling was because he was trying to grow me up, saying, look, you may have started down here, but it's time for you to start talking to me as your father, as your dad, as someone that you have a relationship with, that knows you and you know me, not coming to me in somebody else's template of how they came to me. At some point, we've got to graduate. So that's one thing. The the second point is that pain reveals the warrior in us. A day or two after this just happened, I think maybe yesterday. And as I was in prayer again, he just ran. It seemed like it just came randomly. He said, I'm looking for warriors, not wimps. Now, he said that as a result of me realizing that after I'd had several conversations with multiple people over the past, I'd say over the past month or so, where everybody that I spoke with were going through major things. I mean, it wasn't just little things. Everybody I had spoken to were going through major things. And I was reminded that in this life, we're going to have persecutions. Jesus said, you're going to have it. He said, but be of good cheer. I've overcome the world. And he let us know, that we're going to overcome everything that comes against us. And so what it started me to do was not look at, okay, I've got to, if I know that this is going to happen, if I know that there's going to be things in my life that I'm going to experience, then my prayer shouldn't be, Lord, take it away and all of this kind of stuff. No, Lord, what did this thing come to teach me? What did you put in me to deal with it? And how can I rise up and be the best version of myself in this situation? And so his answer to that came as a random thought. As a matter of fact, as I'm thinking about it now, I wasn't even in my devotion when he spoke this to me. This was like hours later, and I was doing something else. And he answered me and said, I'm looking for warriors, not wimps. So pain reveals the warrior in us. Number 3, greater is he than he that is in the world. We must remember that when it comes to what God has for us and what he intends to do in our lives, we must remember that nothing that we face is greater than the greater one in us. We've got to remember that. So, in closing, I want you to walk away with these 3 things. And I pray that God has allowed me to present it to you the way that it was given to me. That your pain does have a purpose and it is never wasted. It's never wasted. Pain is God's training ground for your destiny. That whatever he's taken you in life, whatever that thing is that you were created to do, the imprint that you were to make in this earth, in this world, the pain that you're experiencing is the training ground, the preparation for your destiny. And number 3, pain is not the end. No, the pain that you experience is not the end. It points us back to God's power. It always points us back to God's power. It's the place that he is the closest to us and the place that we are most aware of his presence. We have a tendency when things are going well, and it's not a conscious thought, but we have a tendency to not depend or rely so much on God when things are going well. But nothing makes us more aware of his presence than the presence of pain. Because it is in our weakness that his strength is always made perfect. So please remember that. So ASAP, as soon as possible, appointed, set apart, and assign pain. Your pain has been authorized, but it's also limited. It is preparation for your purpose, so don't ever despise it. Don't despise it. Discover it. Discover the real meaning and how he plans to use it. I pray that you were able to, that this word was a word for you, that it ministers to your spirit, that it ministers to your heart, and that you will hear what he is saying to you specifically, because he wants to talk to us. He wants to talk to us, y'all. So, with that being said, God bless you. God bless you. And again, if you have been blessed in any way, and especially if you've made it this far, go back over and like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Would you do that for me? Thank you. As I close, thank you again for joining me on another broadcast of Becoming Made for You. Know that on the other side of life after this comma, it really does get better. God bless you. Becoming Made for You, a readiness guide to help prepare you for your kingdom spouse. Are you preparing for a love story written by the author of love himself? Becoming Made for You is more than a guide, it's a divine invitation. Whether you're single and content, in the process of healing, or preparing your heart for a God ordained relationship, this guided journal offers a safe place to reflect, grow, and pray with intentionality. Inside, you'll find daily journaling prompts to build spiritual, emotional, and relational readiness, a soul-searching preparation questionnaire for deeper self-awareness, inspiring biblical love stories and scriptures to fuel your faith, space to write heartfelt letters to your future kingdom spouse. You're not just waiting, you're becoming. And when God says it's time, love will meet you prepared. Because you weren't meant to settle. You've been created for God's best.